The conference room aboard the Zenith Prime was massive, designed to hold representatives from 17 different alien species. Ambassador Lisa Morgan sat at the human delegation table, her hands folded calmly on the surface despite the tension coiling in her stomach. She had been in this room for 3 weeks now, and every day brought more disappointment than the last. Captain Daniel Hayes stood behind her, his military uniform crisp and his expression neutral. He had commanded the UES Horizon for 5 years, and in that time he had learned to read situations quickly. This one was not going well. Beside him, Commander Jake Peterson watched the alien delegates with barely concealed suspicion. He had never trusted the Galactic Council, and everything he witnessed here confirmed his instincts. Lieutenant Amy Sullivan sat at the communications console, her fingers moving quietly across the controls. She was monitoring all transmissions in and out of the conference, both official and unofficial. What she had discovered in the past few days made her blood run cold, but she kept her face calm and professional. The lead negotiator for the council was Zekthor, a towering insectoid from the Thralxian Empire. His chitinous body gleamed under the artificial lights, and his multiple eyes reflected no warmth or compassion. Next to him floated Velash, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline shell. The Corvani Collective had sent their best diplomat, but best meant most ruthless in their culture. Lisa stood to present humanity's latest proposal. She had worked on it for days, finding compromises that would allow both sides to benefit. The human colonies would share resources with the Council in exchange for technology and protection. Trade routes would open. Cultural exchanges would begin. It was fair and reasonable. Zekthor listened for exactly 30 seconds before making a clicking sound that the translator rendered as dismissive laughter. The other aliens joined in, their various forms of amusement filling the chamber. Lisa felt her jaw tighten but kept her voice steady. We believe this proposal addresses the concerns raised by the Council while maintaining human sovereignty over our settled worlds, she said. Velash pulsed with light, and the translator spoke in a voice like wind chimes. Your sovereignty is not the issue, Ambassador. Your existence in your current form is the issue. Humanity has expanded too quickly. You consume resources at alarming rates. You breed without control. You occupy space that has been allocated to older, wiser species for millennia. We occupy space we discovered and settled ourselves, Lisa replied, her voice hardening. Space that was empty when we arrived. Zekthor leaned forward, his mandibles clicking rapidly. Nothing in the galaxy is truly empty, Ambassador. Everything belongs to the established order. You are children playing with fire, and we are here to protect you from yourselves. Captain Hayes took a step forward, but Lisa raised her hand slightly, stopping him. She had dealt with condescension her entire diplomatic career. But this was different. This was not negotiation. This was a lecture from those who believed themselves superior. Then what exactly does the Council propose? She asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed human space, all 47 colony worlds and hundreds of stations. As they watched, the display changed. 70% of those colonies turned red, marked for reallocation. The mining operations humanity had built turned gray, marked as Council-managed resources. The military installations humanity maintained for defense simply disappeared from the map. This is the Council's final offer, Zekthor said. You will maintain control of your homeworld and a handful of minor colonies. All resource-rich worlds will be transferred to Council management. Your military will be reduced to system defense forces only. You will pay reparations for the resources you have already extracted from allocated space. In return, we will allow humanity to exist as a junior member of the galactic community. The room fell silent. Lisa looked at the display, at the casual erasure of 2 centuries of human effort and sacrifice. She thought of the colonists who had risked everything to build new homes among the stars. She thought of the children being born on those worlds, who would grow up as second-class citizens in their own homes. This is not a negotiation, she said quietly. This is conquest dressed in diplomatic language. Call it what you wish, Velash replied, their crystalline form pulsing with what might have been satisfaction. You have 1 standard week to accept these terms. If you refuse, the Council will be forced to take more direct action to ensure galactic stability. That night, Lisa met with her team in their private quarters aboard the Horizon. Lieutenant Sullivan presented the evidence she had gathered. Encrypted transmissions between council members showed they had divided human territory among themselves weeks ago. Military deployment orders were already being drafted. The negotiations were nothing but theater, a performance to justify what they had already decided. They never intended to deal fairly with us, Jake said, his voice tight with anger. This was always about taking what we built. What are our options? Daniel asked, ever the practical soldier. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. She had spent 3 years of her life trying to build bridges between humanity and the galactic community. She believed in diplomacy, in finding peaceful solutions, but she also believed in dignity and freedom. We contact Earth, she said finally. We present the situation exactly as it is, and we let our government decide. The quantum communication with Earth took 6 hours. Lisa presented everything to the United Earth Council. The unfair demands, the proof of deception, the military threats. She laid out 2 paths. They could accept the Council's terms and survive as a subordinate species, or they could refuse and face the consequences. The response came back after 4 hours of debate. It was simple and clear. Humanity had not crawled out of caves, survived plagues and wars, conquered their own world and reached for the stars, only to kneel before those who demanded submission. They would negotiate fairly or not at all. Lisa read the message 3 times to be certain she understood. Then she smiled for the first time in weeks. She had her orders. The next morning she entered the conference chamber for the final time. The alien delegates were already there, confident in their victory. Zekthor's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile among his people. Have you brought your government's acceptance of our generous terms? He asked. Lisa placed a datapad on the table. I have brought our government's response, she said. It reads as follows. Humanity rejects the Council's demands in their entirety. We claim full sovereignty over all human settled space. We will defend our colonies and our people by any means necessary. These negotiations are concluded. The chamber erupted in shrieks, clicks, and pulses of angry light. Zekthor rose to his full height, towering over the table. You make a fatal mistake, Ambassador. You cannot stand against the combined might of the Council. You are primitives with stolen technology. You will be crushed. Lisa gathered her documents and stood. Perhaps, she said calmly. But we will not be enslaved. Captain Hayes, we are leaving. Daniel gave the order and every human in the station began moving toward the horizon. As they walked through the corridors, alien delegates shouted threats and warnings. Guards moved to intercept them, but stopped when Jake's hand moved to his sidearm. The Council wanted compliance, not a firefight aboard their flagship. As the horizon undocked and turned toward human space, Lisa stood on the bridge beside Daniel. Behind them, the Zenith Prime grew smaller. They will come for us now, Daniel said quietly. I know, Lisa replied, but we go home as free people. Whatever comes next, we face it on our feet, not our knees. The ship jumped to faster than light speed, carrying news that would change the galaxy forever. Humanity had walked away from the negotiating table. Now both sides would discover what that truly meant. News of the walkout spread across human space faster than light itself. Quantum communication networks carried Ambassador Lisa Morgan's final statement to every colony, every station, every ship. Within hours, humanity knew that their representatives had refused to submit. The reactions were mixed. On Earth, crowds gathered in city squares to watch the footage. Some cheered at humanity's defiance. Others worried about the consequences. The United Earth government held emergency sessions that stretched through the night. Military commanders reviewed defense plans that had been theoretical until now. Scientists checked their research facilities. Everyone understood that peace had ended, and what came next would test humanity like never before. Captain Daniel Hayes brought the Horizon home to Earth orbit 3 days after leaving the Zenith Prime. He was immediately summoned to meet with the Defense Council. Lisa went with him, along with Jake Peterson and Amy Sullivan. They stood in a secure conference room deep beneath Geneva, surrounded by the leaders who would decide humanity's fate. Tell us the truth, said President Karen White, a former military officer who had led Earth through the tumultuous years of early space expansion. Can we survive if the Council attacks? Daniel looked at the faces around the table. He saw fear but also determination. If they come at us the way they fight their traditional wars in massive fleets expecting us to meet them head-on, then we have a chance. If they are willing to wage total war to destroy every human world no matter the cost, then no. We cannot survive that. Will they do that? Asked General Frank Bishop, commander of Colonial Defense. Lisa shook her head. No. The Council rules through intimidation and economic control. They have not fought a real war in 3,000 years. They have forgotten what it costs. They expect us to see their fleet and surrender immediately. Then we make sure they remember what war really means, said Admiral Richard Cole, the strategic mind behind humanity's military expansion. He was a thin man with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. We have been preparing for this possibility since first contact. He activated a holographic display. It showed human space in detail, every world and station, but it also showed things the Council did not know existed, hidden shipyards in remote asteroid belts, automated factories producing weapons around the clock, defense networks that had been built in secret over 15 years. When we met the Council, we learned everything we could about their technology, Richard explained. We reverse-engineered their weapons, their shields, their engines. Then we improved them. While they believed we were primitive students grateful for their knowledge, we were building something they did not expect. He showed them humanity's arsenal. Kinetic weapons that moved at relativistic speeds, too fast for traditional shields to stop. Drone swarms controlled by advanced artificial intelligence able to overwhelm larger ships through sheer numbers. Stealth technology that bent space itself, making ships invisible to standard sensors. And more. So much more. The Council has 60,000 ships. Richard continued. We have 1,200. But our ships are newer, faster, and designed specifically to fight enemies with numerical superiority. More importantly, we can build ships faster than they can move their fleet across the galaxy. Jake Peterson spoke up. What about their biological weapons? Intelligence suggests they have used disease to control rebellious species in the past. Dr. Helen Cross, a scientist who had been quietly working on defense projects for years, answered that question. We have been developing countermeasures since we first learned about their methods. Every human colony now has medical facilities that can identify and respond to alien pathogens. We are not defenseless. The meeting continued for hours. Plans were made and resources allocated. Every human world went on high alert. Colonists were trained in emergency procedures. Children too young to fight were evacuated to the safest locations. No one wanted war, but if war came, humanity would be ready. Meanwhile, aboard the Zenith Prime, the Galactic Council was having a very different meeting. Zekthor stood before the assembled delegates, his confidence absolute. The humans have made their choice, he announced. They choose extinction over wisdom. Very well, we will dispatch the Grand Fleet to human space. When they see our might, they will beg for the terms we originally offered. If they do not, we will take what should have been given freely. Velash pulsed in agreement. How long will this take? The Grand Fleet will assemble in 1 month, Zekthor replied. 2 weeks to reach human space, another week to crush any resistance. The humans will be subdued within 2 months, perhaps less. Not all council members were so confident. A delegate from the Caress, an avian species that had once fought their own war for independence, spoke up. The humans destroyed our scout fleet at New Boston. They are not as weak as we assumed. A lucky ambush. Zekthor dismissed the concern. They caught a small patrol by surprise. The Grand Fleet is the largest military force assembled in 3 millennia. No species can stand against it. The vote was called. 16 species voted to authorize military action. Only the Caress abstained. The decision was made. The Grand Fleet would be assembled and sent to teach humanity a lesson about their place in the galactic order. What the Council did not know was that Amy Sullivan had left behind a small piece of human technology aboard the Zenith Prime. A listening device smaller than a grain of sand using quantum entanglement to transmit everything it heard. Humanity knew the Council's plans before the meeting had even ended. Back on Earth, Richard Cole studied the intelligence. He called his senior commanders together for a final briefing. They are sending everything, he told them. 60,000 ships, they expect this to be over quickly. Where do you think they will strike first? Asked Captain Nicole Grant, commander of the new stealth carrier Valkyrie. She was young for her rank but had proven herself in every simulation and drill. Richard pointed to a star system on the map. Barnard's Star. It is our richest mining system and closest to Council space. They will want to take it intact if possible, destroy it if not. Either way, it sends a message. Then that is where we will be waiting, Daniel said. Over the next month, humanity worked around the clock. New ships rolled out of hidden shipyards. Weapons were distributed. Every colony fortified its defenses. And in the Barnard system, a trap was carefully laid. Millions of quantum disruption mines were seeded throughout the asteroid fields. They would remain dormant until activated, invisible to scans. Automated factories produced drone swarms by the millions. Stealth carriers moved into position, their crews trained to perfection. Admiral Cole himself traveled to the Barnard system to oversee the preparations. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the strategic display. They think they know us, he said to his staff. They think we are primitives who got lucky with some stolen technology. They think we will panic when we see their numbers. They are wrong on every count. Lieutenant Amy Sullivan, now promoted to commander for her intelligence work, sat at her station monitoring every approach to the system. Admiral, long-range sensors are picking up gravitational distortions, multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Richard smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. How many? Counting now, sir. At least 50,000 confirmed. More arriving every minute. Good, Richard said calmly. Let them come. Let them think they have already won. And then we show them what humanity really is. The Grand Fleet assembled at the edge of the Barnard system, a wall of ships stretching across space. It was the most powerful military force in galactic history. Zekthor stood on his command ship, looking at the tactical display. Somewhere in that system were the human defenders, 1,200 ships at most. It would be a slaughter. He opened a channel to all human colonies. This is Zekthor of the Thralxian Empire, speaking for the Galactic Council. You are surrounded and outmatched. Surrender now, and we will show mercy. Resist, and you will be erased from history. You have 1 hour to respond. In his command center on Mars, Richard Cole listened to the ultimatum. Around him, his commanders waited for his orders. The entire human military, every ship and weapon they had built was ready. Send them our response, Richard said quietly. Amy opened the channel. Daniel Hayes spoke, his voice carrying to every ship in both fleets. This is Captain Daniel Hayes of the United Earth Defense Force. Your terms are rejected. This system is human territory. You are not welcome here. Turn back now, or discover why humanity has survived every threat it has ever faced. Silence answered them. Then, Zekthor's laughter filled the communication channels. So be it, the alien commander said. Grand Fleet, advance. Show these primitives the price of defiance. 60,000 ships began moving forward in perfect formation, confident in their unstoppable power. They had no idea they were sailing into the deadliest trap ever conceived. The Grand Fleet moved through space like a living thing, 60,000 ships in precise formation. Zekthor watched from his command throne, satisfaction radiating from his chitinous form. The humans would see this armada and understand their foolishness. Perhaps they would surrender before the fighting even began. That would be disappointing but efficient. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the enemy fleet approach. He commanded a force of only 50 human vessels, a tiny fraction of what faced them. To any outside observer, this looked like suicide. But Daniel was not worried. He was waiting. Distance to the fleet? He asked calmly. 2 million kilometers in closing, reported his tactical officer. They are maintaining formation, no signs of concern. Good. Maintain our position. Let them come to us. Aboard the Valkyrie, Captain Nicole Grant checked her systems one final time. Her stealth carrier held thousands of attack drones, each one a small package of destruction guided by advanced artificial intelligence. The Valkyrie and 9 other stealth carriers were positioned throughout the Barnard system, invisible to the Council's sensors. They had been here for 3 weeks waiting in perfect silence. All systems green, her executive officer reported. Drones are ready for launch on your command, Nicole nodded. Hold position. Wait for the Admiral's signal. Deep in the asteroid belt, Commander Jake Peterson supervised the final preparations of the quantum disruption mine network. Each mine was a miracle of human engineering, capable of creating a localized space-time distortion. Separately, they were powerful. Together, they would turn the battlefield into chaos. Last mine is in position, his technical officer announced. All units are synced and ready. Excellent, Jake replied. Activate them on standby mode. The moment the Admiral gives the word, we light them up. Admiral Richard Cole sat in his command center on Mars, thousands of light years away but connected to the battlefield through quantum communication. He could see everything in real time. The massive enemy fleet advancing with arrogant confidence, his own forces, tiny but deadly, waiting in position, and between them, the trap that would change galactic history. All units report ready, Admiral, Commander Amy Sullivan informed him. Richard studied the tactical display. The Grand Fleet was approaching the densest part of the asteroid field now, drawn by the human ships that appeared to be defending a critical mining facility. The aliens believed they were forcing a confrontation on their terms. They had no idea they were exactly where humanity wanted them. Signal Captain Hayes, Richard ordered. Begin the performance. Daniel received the order and smiled. All ships open fire. Make it look desperate. The 50 human ships unleashed their conventional weapons at the approaching Grand Fleet. Missiles and energy beams crossed the void, striking shields that barely noticed them. The Council ships did not even bother to return fire. Why waste ammunition on an enemy about to be crushed? Zekthor watched the pathetic human attack with contempt. They fire like children with toys. Continue advancing. Prepare boarding teams. I want the human commanders captured alive. The Grand Fleet pushed deeper into the asteroid field, their formations tightening as they navigated the dense debris. From a military perspective, it was a mistake. In space combat, spreading out was safer, but the Council had not fought a real war in millennia, and they had forgotten the lessons learned in blood. Daniel's ships began to retreat, firing as they went. It looked like a fighting withdrawal, exactly what defeated forces do when they know they cannot win. The Council fleet pursued, sensing victory. Distance? Daniel asked. They are at the optimal position, sir. 98% of their fleet is inside the kill zone. Then let us educate our guests about modern warfare, Daniel said quietly. All ships execute combat jump. Now. The 50 human ships vanished, using short-range faster-than-light jumps to teleport away from the battlefield in an instant. The Council fleet found itself suddenly alone in the asteroid field. Their prey escaped. Zekthor stood in confusion. Where did they go? Scan for them! Before his sensor operators could answer, Admiral Cole gave the order that had been planned for months. Activate the mines. Launch all drones. Execute attack plan Broken Hammer. Throughout the Barnard system, millions of quantum disruption mines came to life simultaneously. Space itself began to tear and twist as localized distortions erupted across the battlefield. The Grand Fleet's perfect formations dissolved into chaos as ships found their navigation systems failing. Faster-than-light drives malfunctioned. Energy shields collapsed under dimensional stress that they were never designed to handle. And into this chaos, humanity struck with everything it had. Nicole Grant's voice was steady as she gave her orders. Launch all drones. Priority targets are command ships and carriers. Saturate their point defenses. The Valkyrie's launch bays opened and thousands of attack drones burst forth like angry wasps. Each drone was small, expendable, and programmed with one purpose: destroy the enemy. They swarmed toward the nearest Council ships in waves, too many to track, too many to stop. The other 9 stealth carriers did the same. Within seconds, 50,000 attack drones filled the battlefield. The Council ships tried to shoot them down, but their weapons were designed to fight other large ships, not countless small targets coming from every direction. Drones slammed into shields, into hulls, into weapon systems. Each one carried enough explosive power to damage critical systems. And for every drone destroyed, 10 more took its place. The swarm was endless, relentless, and terrifying, but the drones were only the first wave. Jake Peterson activated the kinetic kill vehicles that had been positioned throughout the system. These were not guided missiles or energy weapons. They were solid projectiles accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. At those velocities, mass became the ultimate weapon. Shields designed to deflect energy could not stop physical impacts with the force of nuclear weapons. The kinetic weapons struck with devastating precision. A Council battleship took a hit amidships and broke in half. A carrier's flight deck exploded. A command ship's bridge simply ceased to exist, vaporized by the impact. The Grand Fleet, which had never known true combat, did not know how to respond. Zekthor watched his perfect armada turn into a disaster. Ships collided with each other as navigation failed. Weapons fire from panicked crews struck their own vessels. The quantum disruptions made communication difficult, turning the unified fleet into thousands of isolated ships. "Return fire," he screamed. "Destroy these insects." But who should they fire at? The stealth carriers were invisible. The drones were too small and numerous. The kinetic weapons came from every direction with no warning. The Council fleet was fighting an enemy they could not see, could not track, and did not understand. Daniel Hayes and his 50 ships reappeared on the edge of the battlefield. Their weapons, now fully armed with the technology humanity had developed in secret, they struck at the Council's flanks, hitting disabled ships and fleeing vessels. No mercy was shown. This was not a battle for conquest. This was survival. The fighting continued for 18 hours. The Grand Fleet, built over centuries and crewed by billions, was torn apart by an enemy 1/50th its size. When the quantum disruptions finally faded and the drones expended their fuel, the result was clear. Admiral Cole studied the tactical display with no satisfaction, only grim recognition of what war truly meant. "Casualty report?" Amy's voice was quiet. "Council fleet. 24,000 ships destroyed, 16,000 damaged, 20,000 retreating. Estimated casualties, 400 million. The command center was silent. 400 million lives ended because their leaders had demanded submission and met defiance instead. "Our losses?" Richard asked. 87 ships destroyed, 12,000 personnel killed, another 5,000 wounded. Richard closed his eyes briefly. 12,000 humans would never go home. 12,000 families would receive the notification that their loved ones had died in battle. Every war carried this cost. What is the status of the enemy retreat? "They are withdrawing in complete disorder, Admiral." "No pursuit, no organization." "They are running." "Let them run," Richard ordered. "Let them carry the news back to the Council. Let every species know what happened here. Humanity does not seek war, but we will not accept chains." Across the galaxy, the news of the Grand Fleet's destruction spread like fire. The Council's narrative of invincibility shattered in a single battle. Member species that had been forced into submission generations ago saw opportunity. Subject races began planning rebellions. The galactic order that had stood for 3,000 years began to crack. On the Zenith Prime, the Council leadership met in emergency session. The chamber was chaos. Delegates screamed accusations at each other. 3 species formally announced their withdrawal from the Council. 5 more demanded immediate reforms. Zekthor, who had promised easy victory, found himself stripped of authority and exiled. Velash's crystalline form pulsed with rage and fear, but there was nothing they could do. The humans had proven that the Council could bleed. A new delegation of moderate Council members took control. They sent a quantum message to Earth requesting negotiations. Real negotiations this time, not demands disguised as diplomacy. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Barnard's Star. The galaxy was still adjusting to the new reality. The Galactic Council, once thought invincible, had been humbled. 3 species had withdrawn completely, forming their own independent coalition. 5 others had demanded and received greater autonomy. The carefully maintained order of 3,000 years was crumbling. Ambassador Lisa Morgan stood in the conference center on Aurora, humanity's newest colony world. The building had been constructed specifically for these negotiations, a statement of intent. The Council would come here to human space and meet on equal terms, or they would not meet at all. Captain Daniel Hayes stood beside her, now promoted to Admiral and recognized across human space as the hero of Barnard's Star. He wore his dress uniform but carried himself like a man ready for battle. Trust was earned slowly, and the Council had not earned it yet. Commander Jake Peterson oversaw security for the conference. Teams of human Marines patrolled the grounds and orbital defense platforms ringed the planet. If this was a trap, the Council would discover that humanity had become very good at turning traps against their creators. The Council delegation arrived in a single ship, deliberately small and non-threatening. No massive flagship this time, no show of overwhelming force. They came quietly, almost humbly, and that alone told Lisa how much had changed. The new council representatives were different from before. Zekthor and Velash were gone, stripped of power by their own people. In their place came delegates who understood the cost of war. The Thrausian representative was a younger diplomat named Kirvan, who had argued against military action from the beginning. The Corvani sent a scholar rather than a warrior. Most importantly, several former subject species now sat at the table as full members, their voices carrying equal weight. Lisa welcomed them formally but without warmth. Courtesy was required. Friendship would have to be earned. "Thank you for coming to Aurora," she said as the session opened. "Humanity hopes these negotiations will be more productive than our last meeting." Kirvan inclined his head respectfully. "Ambassador Morgan, we come not to make demands but to listen. The Council has learned a painful lesson. We wish to build something better than what existed before." "Words are easy," Admiral Cole said from his seat. He had insisted on being part of the delegation and no one had argued. The Council spoke of partnership before but meant slavery. How do we know this time is different? The Caress delegate, an avian named Tessa, spread her wings slightly. Her species had abstained from the vote to attack humanity, and now they served as mediators. "Because the old council is broken, Admiral. Because 3 species have already left and more will follow if we cannot prove we have changed. Because we have no choice but to build something better, or watch everything collapse." The negotiations began slowly, carefully. Both sides had been hurt. Both sides were wary. But this time there was real conversation instead of ultimatums. The Council's new proposal was dramatically different from their first demands. They acknowledged humanity's sovereignty over all settled worlds. They offered full voting membership with veto power. They proposed mutual defense treaties that were truly mutual, not thinly veiled occupation. They even agreed to reparations for the attempted subjugation. Lisa studied each point carefully, looking for traps or hidden conditions. She found none. The Council had learned their lesson well. They could not defeat humanity militarily, so they sought genuine partnership. But humanity had learned lessons too. Jake Peterson proposed verification protocols. Human observers would be stationed throughout Council space to ensure compliance with treaties. Trade agreements would include safeguards against economic manipulation. Military cooperation would be voluntary, never mandatory. The Council delegates agreed to each point without argument. Their defeat had been that complete, that educational. As the negotiations progressed over weeks, something unexpected happened. Real conversations began. Over dinner one evening, Kirvan spoke with Lisa about his own species' history. The Thrauxians had once been conquerors, building their empire through military might. It had taken a disastrous war 3,000 years ago to teach them humility. "We forgot those lessons," Kirvan admitted, his translator rendering his clicks as regret. "We became what we once fought against. It took humanity to remind us." Dr. Helen Cross, the scientist who had developed many of humanity's weapons, found herself in deep discussion with Corvani researchers. They were fascinated by human approaches to physics and engineering. Helen was equally interested in their mastery of energy manipulation. They began sketching out joint research projects. Captain Nicole Grant met with Caress flight commanders, comparing tactics and techniques. The avians respected her skill and courage. She appreciated their centuries of experience. They discovered they could learn from each other. Not everyone was happy with the developing cooperation. Some humans wanted revenge for the Council's attempt at subjugation. Some Council species feared humanity's military power. But the moderates on both sides worked to build bridges. One crucial moment came when discussing the fate of the remaining Council hardliners. Several species demanded that Zekthor and others who had pushed for war face trial for their crimes. Lisa surprised everyone by arguing against it. "Punishment feels good," she said, "but it does not build peace. Zekthor has already lost everything. His reputation, his power, his future. That is consequence enough. If we spend our time seeking revenge, we will never move forward." Admiral Cole disagreed, his voice sharp. "They tried to enslave us. Millions died in that battle. You want to just forget that?" "I will never forget," Lisa replied firmly. "But there is a difference between remembering and being trapped by the past. We can acknowledge what happened and still choose to build something better. That is what makes us different from them. The debate continued for days. Finally, a compromise was reached. The war criminals would face justice, but in a reformed council court that included human judges. Punishment would be measured and proportional. Most importantly, the focus would be on preventing future atrocities, not just punishing past ones. As the negotiations entered their final phase, the real work began. The council's entire structure needed reform. The old system of dominant species ruling over junior members was abolished. In its place came a more democratic model where each member had real voice and vote. Humanity played a crucial role in designing the new system. Jake Peterson insisted on constitutional limits to prevent any species from gaining too much power. Amy Sullivan designed communication networks that would allow instant voting and discussion across the galaxy. Admiral Cole helped create a new military structure focused on genuine defense rather than intimidation. The resulting galactic assembly was something truly new. Every member species had equal representation. Decisions required genuine consensus. Military force could only be used with overwhelming approval. Most importantly, any species could leave at any time without penalty. On the day the final treaty was signed, Lisa stood at the podium in the Great Hall on Aurora. Delegates from 47 species watched, some human, some alien. The document before her represented months of careful negotiation, compromise, and hope. This treaty recognizes a simple truth, she said. No species has the right to rule another. We are all different, but we are all equal in our right to exist freely. Humanity fought not for dominance, but for dignity. Today we build something based on respect rather than fear. She signed the document with a pen that had been carried by the first human astronaut to leave Earth's solar system. Captain Daniel Hayes signed next, representing humanity's military. One by one, the alien delegates came forward to add their signatures. When the ceremony ended, Daniel walked with Lisa through Aurora's gardens. The colony world was beautiful, a testament to human determination and creativity. Above them, ships from a dozen species moved peacefully through orbit. "Do you think it will last?" Daniel asked. "I think we have a chance," Lisa replied. "The council tried to force us into submission and learned they could not. Now they are trying cooperation. Maybe that will work better. And if it does not, if they betray us again?" Lisa smiled slightly. "Then we will remind them why that is a bad idea. We are not the weak species they thought we were. We proved that at Barnard Star. But more importantly, we proved we can be strong without being cruel. That is the real victory." They walked in silence for a while, enjoying the peaceful evening. Somewhere in the galaxy, former subject species were celebrating their new freedom. Other species were adjusting to a future where might did not make right. And humanity stood at the center of this change, not as conquerors, but as the catalyst that had forced everyone to become better. Admiral Richard Cole joined them, his expression thoughtful. "The first joint patrol launches tomorrow. Human and Caress ships working together to hunt down the last of Zekthor's supporters." "Working together," Lisa mused. 6 months ago we were at war. Now we are allies. "The galaxy changes quickly." "Not allies yet," Richard corrected. "Partners, maybe. Trust takes longer to build than treaties to sign, but it is a start." Lieutenant Amy Sullivan approached with a datapad. "Ambassador, we are receiving messages from 17 species requesting bilateral. 20 years had passed since humanity walked away from the Zenith Prime. 20 years since the Battle of Barnard Star. 20 years since the galaxy changed forever. The transformation had been slow, difficult, and sometimes painful. But it had happened. Former Admiral Richard Cole stood in a classroom at the Interstellar Naval Academy on Luna, Earth's moon. The academy trained officers from 30 different species now, teaching them strategy, tactics, and most importantly, the ethics of military power. Richard had retired from active service 5 years ago, but he could not stay away from teaching. The next generation needed to understand what their parents had learned through blood and fire. His students were a mix of humans and aliens. A young Caress named Syrah sat next to Peter Yang, a human from the Mars colonies. A Thralxian student called Kitvar worked with Lisa's daughter Emma on a tactical simulation. They did not see species differences. They saw classmates and friends. "Today we study the Battle of Barnard Star," Richard announced. "Not to glorify war, but to understand its cost and its lessons." Who can tell me the tactical situation? Peter raised his hand. The Grand Fleet had overwhelming numerical superiority, 60,000 ships against 1,200. Traditional military doctrine said humanity should have surrendered or been destroyed within hours. Correct. So why did humanity win? Richard asked. Sira spoke up, her translator rendering her avian speech as clear words. Because humanity did not fight a traditional battle. They used asymmetric warfare, turning their weakness in numbers into an advantage in flexibility and innovation. Also correct, but there is a deeper lesson here. Richard pulled up a holographic display showing the casualty figures. 400 million Council personnel died in that battle. 12,000 humans. What does this tell us? The classroom was quiet. Kittiver finally spoke, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. That victory is not the same as success. The Council lost the battle, but both sides lost something precious. Lives that can never be returned. Exactly, Richard said. I commanded that battle. I gave the orders that killed 400 million sentient beings. I do not regret defending humanity, but I will carry those deaths for the rest of my life. War is sometimes necessary, but it is always tragedy. Never forget that. The lesson continued, but Richard's thoughts drifted briefly. The Academy itself was proof of how much had changed. 20 years ago, the idea of humans and Thralxians studying together would have been impossible. Now it was normal. Across the solar system on Earth, Ambassador Lisa Morgan prepared for another day at work. She had been elected Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Assembly 3 years ago, the first human to hold the position. Her office in Geneva overlooked the city where humanity had once met, to decide whether to fight or submit. She remembered that day clearly and was grateful for the courage of those who chose freedom. Her assistant, a Corvani named Levick, brought her the day's schedule. Joint economic development proposals, dispute resolution between member species, research funding allocations, the normal work of governing a peaceful galaxy. It was sometimes boring compared to the dramatic days of war and negotiation, but Lisa preferred boring. Boring meant peace. Chancellor, the Crest delegation has arrived for their meeting, Levick informed her. Lisa smiled. Send them in. The Crest had become humanity's strongest allies in the Assembly. Their early abstention from the vote to attack humans had not been forgotten. Now their ships often flew alongside human vessels on joint missions. Their scientists collaborated with human researchers. Their people visited each other's worlds freely. The meeting was brief and productive. Afterward, Lisa took a moment to look out her window at Earth. The planet that had given birth to humanity looked peaceful from here. No signs of the struggles and conflicts that had shaped their species. Just a beautiful blue and green world hanging in space. Her quantum communicator chimed. A message from Admiral Daniel Hayes, who commanded the Joint Exploration Fleet pushing into unknown regions of the galaxy. She opened it eagerly. Lisa, you should see this, Daniel's message began. His face on the screen showed excitement she had not seen in years. We have made first contact with a species that has never met the Council. They call themselves the Varani, completely isolated for thousands of years. The image changed to show a massive alien city on a planet orbiting a distant star. The architecture was beautiful and completely unique. The Varani themselves appeared in the next image, tall and graceful with skin that shifted colors like mood rings. They are cautious but curious, Daniel continued. They ask what kind of galaxy exists beyond their borders. I am telling them the truth, that it is a galaxy still learning to be better, a galaxy where different peoples try to live together as equals. A galaxy where you do not have to submit to survive. Lisa saved the message and sent a quick reply, authorizing full diplomatic protocols. First contact was always delicate. The Varani would decide their own future, but humanity would offer friendship, not demands. Captain Nicole Grant, now an admiral herself, oversaw the joint patrol that kept pirate factions and criminal organizations in check. Her fleet included ships from 8 different species, all working together with surprising efficiency. The old Council military had been about intimidation. The new Assembly forces focused on protection and aid. Today they were responding to a distress call from a colony world. A natural disaster had struck and thousands needed evacuation. Nicole's fleet worked alongside Thralxian relief ships and Crest medical vessels. Species that had been enemies 20 years ago now saved lives together. As she watched the evacuation proceed smoothly, Nicole thought about how far they had all come. Her first command had been fighting for humanity's survival. Now she commanded a truly galactic force dedicated to helping everyone. It was a better use of her skills. Commander Jake Peterson had left military service 10 years ago to become a teacher. He worked at a school on Aurora where human and alien children studied together. His students ranged from 6 to 16 years old, a mix of species that would have been impossible in his youth. Today's lesson was history. Jake told them about the old council, about the demands made on humanity, about the decision to walk away and fight. The children listened with wide eyes, finding it hard to believe the galaxy had ever been so unjust. Why did they treat humans badly? Asked a young Thralxian girl named Sisera. Fear, Jake answered honestly. And arrogance. They were old species who thought their age made them wise. They forgot that wisdom comes from learning, not just from existing. Your grandparents' generation made mistakes. My generation fought to correct them. Your generation gets to build something better. A human boy named Kevin raised his hand. Will we have to fight wars too? I hope not, Jake said. But you will have to fight in other ways. Fight against injustice. Fight against prejudice. Fight to keep the galaxy moving forward instead of backward. Those battles never end, but they are worth fighting. Dr. Helen Cross continued her research, now leading joint projects that involve scientists from 17 species. They were working on faster-than-light travel that did not rely on the dangerous quantum drives that had caused so many accidents. They were developing medical technology that worked across different biologies. They were pushing the boundaries of knowledge together. Helen had published a paper last month that was co-authored by researchers from 9 species. It solved a theoretical problem that had puzzled physicists for centuries. The breakthrough came from combining human mathematical approaches with Corvani energy manipulation theories and Caress observational data. None of them could have done it alone. She stood in her laboratory looking at the results of their latest experiment. Beside her, a Thralxian colleague named Varix clicked with satisfaction. It works, Varix said through his translator. We actually did it. We did, Helen agreed. 20 years ago, you and I would have been enemies. Today we are partners in discovery. That might be the greatest achievement of all. On Aurora, in the park where the treaty had been signed, a memorial stood. It listed the names of every human who died in the Battle of Barnard's Star. 12,000 names carved in stone. Families came to remember. Students came to learn. Aliens came to understand. But next to the human memorial stood another monument. This one listed the 400 million council personnel who died in the same battle. It had been controversial when first proposed. Some humans argued that the enemy did not deserve remembrance. Others said that remembering all the dead, regardless of side, was how you prevented future wars. Lisa had broken the tie vote, arguing for the memorial. They were not our friends, she had said. But they were people. They followed orders they believed were right. We honor our dead by remembering what we fought for. We honor their dead by remembering what we fought against. Both monuments remind us why peace matters. Now children of both sides played in the park between the memorials. They did not understand the old hatreds. They only knew the galaxy as it was now, imperfect but improving. As evening fell on Aurora, representatives from across the galaxy gathered for the annual assembly meeting. Lisa stood to address them, looking out at faces both familiar and strange. Some were allies humanity had fought beside. Some were former enemies who had become friends.